Good morning everyone and welcome back to Grade B. So, welcome. Just a second. Yeah. No, we are good to go. Now let's start the discussion on budget highlights. We were discussing yesterday. Today we'll be discussing on the types of deficit we have, and then we'll be jumping on to the discussion on the budgets straightforward, right? And in between a little bit, very happy Holi to everyone. So in between that, we'll also be talking about the external as well as the public debt. You should be remembering that what is the meaning of public debt, what is the meaning of external debt, what are the constituents of it, what is the percentage that right now we are experiencing, and what are the our targets for future, right? So let's start with it. First of all, some examples, although we have discussed already these examples, but just have a glance over them. Tax revenue, the examples of tax revenue, your corporation tax, the tax which is applicable on the companies, income tax that is levied on the individuals as well as the HUFs, etc., wealth tax, excise duty, customs, GST. Now GST will be into your indirect taxes. Next is your non-tax revenue, interest receipts that the government is going to receive, dividend and as well as the profits. These are all parts of your non-tax revenues. Finally, moving on to the capital receipts. In capital receipts, you have got non-debt receipts as well as the debt receipts. See, I have told you there can be two types of receipts in the capital receipts criteria. One that creates a liability for you. Suppose you are borrowing any particular amount, you are receiving the money, but at the same time that is creating a liability. And on the other hand, you can also receive a capital receipt if you have decreased your asset. So one of the example for that is disinvestment receipts, right? If you are selling one of your assets, you are selling one of your stakes in any particular company, that means government is selling its asset. And by selling your asset, if you are receiving any particular money, that will be coming under non-debt receipt, because that is not creating any liability for me. That is just reducing my asset. Fine. So recoveries of loans, advances, disinvestment of the government stake in public sector banks, financial institutions, issue of bonus shares, all these they come under the non-debt receipts. Debt receipts means you have taken loans, treasury bill borrowings, state provident fund, gold bonds, any kind of borrowing that you are doing, they will be coming under the debt receipt for the government. Now moving ahead and talking about the government deficit. So I have told you that there are four heads, right? In the government budget: revenue receipt, capital receipt, revenue expenses, capital expenses, right? Now just talk about revenue receipts as well as the revenue expenditure. Fine. The difference between your revenue receipts and your revenue expenditure is called as the revenue deficit. That means what? If the government is experiencing revenue deficit, that means government is not earning enough in order to cover its day-to-day expenses. Revenue expenditures are day-to-day expenses. So you are not earning enough in order to cover your day-to-day expenses, and that is revenue deficit for me. Is it a good indicator? No, it is not, because you are not even able to earn enough in order to cover your expenses, and that is not a good thing, and we should be limiting that. FRBM Act gives us the target about this. We are going to read about what are the targets as well. So revenue deficit is the difference between the government's revenue expenditure as well as the revenue receipt. Revenue deficit, what is the implication of revenue deficit? Whenever you are reading any kind of deficit, it becomes very important that you know that, okay, what is the implication of it, or what do we mean by it, right? So here see, it means that the government's current expenses are more than its current revenue, and it will have to use up the savings of other sectors to finance its consumption, right? Why? Because major part of our revenue expenditure like the salary, pension, interest payment, these are fixed, committed expenditure. You cannot increase or decrease it. So you must have seen that in the recent times, government is trying to reduce these kinds of expenditure. So even in armed forces, there is a new scheme, right? Agniveers. What is the intention of that particular scheme? Basically is because the long expenditures that happen on the salaries as well as the pension payments, government wants to limit that particular expenses. So you see, that's what they are saying, कि majority of our revenue expenditure is committed. Committed means we have to pay for this. We cannot reduce it. So that is our problem. When government is faced with revenue deficit, it reduces the productive capital expenditure. Productive capital expenditure means, suppose you earn 20,000 rupees. Just suppose, right? 20,000 rupees you earn and your expenses are 25,000 rupees. So that means what? 25,000 are your day-to-day expenses. You have to borrow 5,000 from someone else. And at the same time, it also implies that you will not be able to expend on the productive expenditures. Like if you wanted to buy a particular laptop for yourself, so that you can work on it, you can generate revenue out of it, you will not be able to do. Why? Because all the money that you have got, you have spent it on the day-to-day expenses. So that is a revenue deficit for us. Important to understand. Next is your fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is the difference between government's total expenditure and its total receipts except the borrowings. So fiscal deficit means, if I say what is the meaning of fiscal deficit, someone will say the borrowings that government has to do. Fine. This is the aim of fiscal deficit. So you see, first of all, you see this. Fiscal deficit is equals to net borrowings at home. That means in India, your total borrowings from RBI as well as borrowing from abroad. All these three together. This means what? This means total borrowing may have been borrowed from anyone. Does not matter. Now what is the other formula that we have for calculating fiscal deficit? This is here. Total expenditure less total receipts, both revenue as well as capital. But in that, please do not include the borrowings. Fine. We include borrowings as well in our capital receipts, but while calculating fiscal deficit, please do not include the borrowings, because we want to know that what are exactly our borrowing needs. Fine. So this is called your fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is your net borrowing requirements. Now, an example has also been provided to you. Suppose government's total expenditure is 17 lakh crores. Total receipts are 13 lakh crores. That means what? Now it has to have take 4 lakh crores in form of borrowings if it wants to meet its expenditure. See, खर्चा तो आपने कर दिया है, right? Now you have to call for the income as well. Income आपकी है नहीं, तो फिर आप क्या करेंगे? You will take up the borrowings. Fine. So this 4 lakh crores, it is called as fiscal deficit. Obviously, the government, which government does the borrowing, it is increasing a long-term liability for us. So it is a part of capital receipt. But at the time of calculation of fiscal deficit, please ignore the borrowings at once. Just understand that what all are your total expenditure, what all are your total receipts, but in that borrowings will not be included. So this particular thing will give you what are your total borrowing requirements. Next is fiscal deficit. It indicates the total borrowing of the government from all sources, whether you have borrowed from the domestic sources or you have borrowed from the external sources, all of it will be included. Now you see it over here. We all know that the banks have to maintain SLR by purchasing government securities, right? We all know this. Banks, they have got SLR requirements, statutory liquidity ratio, fine. And how do they fulfill it? By purchasing government securities. So when banks purchase the government securities, what they are actually doing, you just see this. When they purchase government securities, they give money to the government. Whenever banks purchase government security, they pay for these government securities, right? So that means they are giving money to the government. Now this is also a kind of borrowing. Just understand this in a following format. Suppose this particular bank has purchased a treasury bill from the government. Now treasury bills have got a maturity period of, let's say, 394 days. So after 394 days, government has to give back the money, right? So obviously the SLR securities that the banks purchase, they also form as a funding source for the government. Government borrows like that as well. So that's what they are telling you over. Domestic borrowings includes government debt securities like treasury bills, dated securities. Commercial bank purchase these securities on a major scale in order to fulfill their SLR requirements, and that is how funding is received by your government. Now, one short question I would like to ask you, because we are moving to our next topic, although there is one more deficit, but we'll be moving to our next topic, and hence I want you to answer a short, very short question of mine. So, number one option, internal debt, and number two option is external debt. Internal debt means all the borrowings which has been done within India. External debt means all the borrowings which has been done from outside India. You guys will have to tell me that India is having more of internal debt or more of external debt. Tell me. I need your answers right now. India is having more of internal debt or more of external debt? What about others? See, all the people who are watching this particular class, please give me your answers. I need your answers right now. Fine. Just few people have answered, and that is okay. Internal debt as well as external debt. So all those people who are saying external debt, this is not correct. India is having more of internal debt. You will be surprised to know why no. So this will be your homework to do today, because we are not reading the debt related class. I am going to tell you why this is so, but this is your homework. Please read a little bit about it. I'll just give you an intro on it. So what happens is, internal debt means you are borrowing from within. External debt means you are borrowing from outside. Believe me, during all these years, India has maintained that 90%, 90 to 80% of its debts, I'm talking about since 1991 till this particular period of time, that means the modern time. In the past 3 decades, India's internal debt has been hovering between 80%, 90%, right? So these are the areas. India has got more of its debt from the internal sources only. We are not dependent on external debt. You see, it happens because most of the times we listen that, okay, external debt has come, World Bank has supported us, or some other bank has supported us. But this is not the case, because any country which is having more of external debt, You can see our neighbors, Pakistan as well as Sri Lanka. Why they are in trouble? Because they have taken the borrowings from China. That is an external debt. There are so many risks involved when you borrow externally, and the most problematic risk is exchange risk. So they create the pressure. That's why our government and any government for that matter, they always prefer that you should be having internally generated sources most of the time. Fine. So the debt of India is also divided into two parts called as the internal debt as well as the external debt. This is your homework to read more about both of these, because this is not the class to cover them. Hence, I am leaving up to you guys. Next, see, talking about the primary deficit. Primary deficit is large part of the government fiscal deficit. It needs to pay interest on its previous accumulated debt. So basically what we are doing out of the fiscal deficit, that means our total borrowing needs, what government says it's yes. So so one student is asking that if we will increase the taxation, then total receipts will increase and total borrowings will reduce. Yes, exactly. That is going to happen. But in just think about India and think about when the budgets are introduced. At that particular time, if government has increased any kind of taxation rates, then you can just see that what is the havoc that this increase of tax rate causes. No one wants increase in tax rate in India, right? So government is devising newer and newer ways so that it can increase its receipts. And one more thing, in India, I don't think that the rates are a problem, like income tax rates or any other rates. These are not the problem. The problem is of tax evasion. There are so many people who are eligible in India for paying income tax, but still they do not file their returns, they do not pay any income tax. There are too much lesser number of people in who are filing their income tax, and out of those also many of them are filing a nil return. That means they do not pay any income tax. Only a handful of people they are paying income tax, and it is not true, it is not acceptable, because India is such a big country. There are many people who are liable for paying income tax. So problem is not the tax rate, problem is of the tax evasion. Everyone wants to save the tax, everyone wants to pay less to the government, but they want to have best of the services from the government. So this is the problematic thing. Now leaving that particular discussion, talking about primary deficit. Primary deficit, if I talk about the formula is fiscal deficit less interest payments. Government says that please judge our performance on the basis of present. Why do we have to include the burden of previous times? There have been previous governments who have borrowed at the various interest rates, and we will not be bearing the faulty performances of those particular governments. So hence this particular primary deficit concept has also been evolved. This talks about that what is the current borrowing by the current government, not having the burden of previous years. So see over here, primary deficit is equals to fiscal deficit less net interest liability. So it tells about that the deficit in the government budget excluding the interest liabilities on the government's accumulated debt, right? Now we have got a new term called as the effective revenue deficit. Now, what was the meaning of revenue deficit? Revenue expenditure less revenue income, right? One thing, let me explain you like this way. It will be easier for you to understand. revenue deficit. Fine. Now in revenue deficit, how do we calculate this? Revenue expenditure less revenue income. Now tell me one thing. If central government is giving any grant to the state government, where it will come? I am asking you, if central government is giving grant to state government, where it will come? Central government has given grant to state government. First of all, is this the expenditure for central government? Yes. What kind of expense is it? Revenue or capital? So I call it as revenue expenditure. For whom? For central government. Why it is a revenue expenditure? Because central government is not going to get back the amount of grant. It is not a loan. This is one time grant, like we give help to someone and then we forget about it. There will be no reverse flow of money from state government to central government. So now this is very clear that it is a revenue expenditure. Now fine. But central government thought that the grants we are giving to the state governments, they are using it for the capital purposes. Like just for an example, let me tell you. Suppose central government has given the grant for the Mahatma Gandhi Narega scheme. Fine. To state governments. Now for central government it is a revenue expenditure, but state government is using that particular grant for the building of roads and the panchayat bhavans. Correct? So these are what? These are infrastructure. The grant which has been given by you is being used for the capital expenditure. So hence the concept of effective revenue deficit says that out of our revenue expense, please remove the grants which are used by states for capital development. Fine. So this is the concept of effective revenue deficit. Were you able to understand this? Tell me. Is there any doubt in this? Please tell me quickly. Thank you so much. Okay. So now that is what they are saying. The definition of revenue expenditure is that it shall not create any physical or financial asset, but this creates a problem in accounts. So there are several grants which are provided by the central government to the state government, and for central government it is basically a revenue expenditure, but state governments use it for the creation of asset. Hence we have to calculate the effective revenue deficit norm. Next is now the deficit financing. What does deficit financing means? You have got a deficit. That means you have got there are not enough revenues in order to cover your expenses. There are deficit. That means you have to do the borrowings. Now there are two steps how you can cover your deficit. One is printing of additional currency or through the borrowing. Either as a government, see, if you have got more expense and you have got the power To do what? To print currency, and you have to make certain payments. So what you will do? You will just print currency and just pay to them, right? And the next step is, or you can also do the borrowings. Now tell me this, can I opt for both the options? Anything that you want to tell me after reading this particular statement? Anything? Can I print additional currency in India for monetizing my deficit, or in order to bridge my deficit? That is my question. Can I print additional currency in India to complete my deficit or not? What do others think about it? Very good. Now tell me, see, the answer is there are two options. If you have got deficit, either you can do borrowing or you can print additional currency. This is the general economics way. But in India, we cannot do this. Not allowed. Fine. You cannot print additional currencies in order to bridge your deficit. Now, you guys, I'm so very proud of you. You already know about it. Please tell me, by virtue of this act, this is not allowed. By virtue of which act? Oh, very good. Very good, Rishabh. So, FRBM Act, it prohibits your printing of additional currency, and like Siddhartha also mentioned, it raises inflation. You are putting more money in the hands of citizens. It will increase their demand power and they will be demanding more, and it will lead to increase in the prices of the commodities. This phenomena you might be witnessing in some African countries which are war torn, or where the governance is not is established properly. So you can witness this phenomena over there. Now, what are the sources of financing? First of all, market borrowings, highest shares through government securities and treasury bills, securities against small savings, state provident funds, internal debts as well as public account, and external debt has got the lowest share. So in the 2022, external debt was 20% of your GDP. Fine. It was, external debt was 20% of the GDP. 80% was your internal debt. Please remember this. India has got more of internal debt, not external debt. Now, the revenue receipts we have already talked about. The next thing that we should be talking about, FRBM Act. Okay, fine. Just take this. So, what your FRBM Act says? FRBM Act 2003 says that, dear government, please limit your fiscal deficit, right? And also they want that central government debt should be limited to 60% and central government debt to 40% of the GDP. That means what? Total debt of the government should be limited to 60% of the GDP. Out of that, central government's debt will be limited to 40% of the GDP, and state governments, all the state governments taken together, their debt should be limited to 20% of the GDP. Fine. Now tell me, this is the what FRBM Act says, that government should limit its debt to 60% of GDP. Now tell me, what is the current level of government's debt? I am talking totally, including central government as well as the state government. Do you guys have any idea? No. Listen it. So see, there are different parameters on to which, no. So I have a data of year 2021. And total government's debt, that means including your central as well as the state government, total debt of the government was somewhere around 89% of GDP. I repeat, 89.4 or zero point 0.6 something of GDP. Why such high debts level? Because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is just in order to give you an idea that we are, see, how come you can say 50% or that? Because just understand, just put the sense over here. FRBM Act is saying that please limit total government's debt to 60% of GDP by 2025. Why the FRBM Act will give you a target if you are already sitting at 50%? That means I have this data is nowhere going to help you. This is just to give you a perspective that what is the total debt of our central as well as the state government. Fine. Now next thing we are going to talk about debts. Very important, very confusing as well. See over here, we are talking about public debt. Public debt means what? Public debt, it includes internal debt as well as external debt. Internal debt means which has been borrowings which has been done within the India and borrowings which has been done outside India called as the external debt. The next thing which you should remember is when I am saying public debt means the total debt which India has. So these borrowings have been done by government, individuals as well as the corporates, everyone. Here also internal debts will include all the borrowings which has been done by the government, individuals as well as your corporates. And same thing will be over here. So when I am saying that I am talking about the debt, that India has got an external debt of 20% of GDP. Who has taken that debt? I am not just talking about central government. Please ensure this. I am not only talking about government. When I am saying that external debt of India is 20% of its GDP, I am saying this debt has been taken by central government, has been taken by individuals, has been taken by the corporates. Anyone who is a citizen of India or a resident in India, those who have borrowed externally, all that will be taken together in order to compute the external debt. I am not just talking about the central government. Please remember this. Now see over here. So Article 292 of the Constitution says that Government of India can borrow amounts as specified by the Parliament. Article 293 of the Constitution says that the state government in India can borrow only from the internal sources. Thus, the Government of India incurs both internal as well as external debt, where state governments can incur only the internal debt. But this mechanism have been changed a little bit from the commission that has recommended that state government are also now also eligible, but they have to get the guarantee of the central government. So indirectly, if state governments are not able to pay up to the external borrowers, then it is central government who is responsible. So see over here, it is very important to understand. You never know whether such kind of questions will be asked in the examinations, right? Because these are so much conceptual. Your constitution says that state government can only incur internal debt. Now, as per the recommendations of the 12th Finance Commission, 12th Finance Commission has recommended that we should be providing external financing to various states. So now central government provides this external financing. Sovereign guarantee is given for these particular borrowings. From April 1, 2005, all general category states, they can borrow from multilateral as well as the bilateral agencies on back-to-back basis. Interest cost, risk of currency and exchange rate fluctuations are passed on to the state government. That means state government has to pay interest. Any kind of changes that occur in the installment payment due to the exchange rate related fluctuations, state government has to pay for that as well. What will be the role of central government? Central government just provides the guarantee, sovereign guarantee. Fine. In India, central government liabilities include all of the following. What are government liabilities? Internal debt, external debt, public account liability as well as other liabilities. In India, public debt means what? Public debt means internal debt as well as the external debt of government of India. External debt refers to all external debt taken by the central government or state government or any Indian company. Fine. Anyone who is going to take central government or state government or any Indian company. External debt of India, external debt of government of India, external debt of state government, PSUs, NRI deposits, FPIs, etc. Everyone is included over here. Now we'll be talking about the budget highlights. So, in case of your budget highlights, many of the schemes will come that we have already covered in the schemes related documents. So I will not be very much giving you the detail on it. What you have to just understand the various points, various things, datas which you can take out from this particular document. If any new schemes has been introduced, we are going to be talking about it. Now let's say the introduction. This budget hopes to build on the foundation India at the rate 100. This is the criteria. Next is we want to be proactive in the research as well as taking a foraying into new particular technologies. So what are these? Proactive role in frontier areas like the mission life as well as the national hydrogen mission. Why these particular missions? So in order to make the research in these particular technologies, in order to provide better services to our citizens as well as at the same time to protect environment as well. Next is scheme to supply free food grains to over 80 crores persons from 28 months. Now, which is the scheme for this? PM Garib Kalyan Ann Yojana. This scheme has been extended. The entire expenditure of about rupees 2 lakh crores, it will be borne by the central government. Next is G20 presidency. India is currently having the G20 presidency and right now G20 meet is also going on and we are conducting this with the aim of Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, right? You guys already know about G20, right? Do you know about G20? Tell me whether India is a member of G20 or not. India is a member of G20 or not? Yes. Is EU a member of G20? Is European Union a member of G20? Good. Fine. Is UAE a member of G20? Is UAE a member of G20? Give me the answer. Fine. Search it for yourself. It is not. Achievement since 2014, leaving no one behind. Fine. The per capita income has more than doubled to rupees 1.97 lakh. In these 9 years, the Indian economy has increased in size from being 10th to 5th largest in the world. Please always keep a tab on such kind of datas, right? Fifth largest in the world. There are two ways how to measure your economy. One is your purchasing power parity, that is as per PPP base, and as per your the nominal GDP criteria as well. So in the nominal GDP criteria, we are the fifth largest right now in the world. The economy has become a lot more formalized. As per purchasing power parity, what is the size of Indian economy? Tell me. So the economy has become a lot more formalized. Why? Because EPFO membership has been doubling to 27 crores. Provident fund related membership. These many payments have been happened through UPI, and these are a few more benefits that has given to the government. 11.7 crore household toilets have been built under Swachh Bharat. LPG connection 9.6 crore, 220 crore vaccinations, 47.8 crore PM Jan bank accounts, as well as the insurance cover has been provided under PM Suraksha Bima Yojana as well as Jeevan Jyoti Yojana. Cash transfer of 2.2 lakh crore over 11.4 crore farmers under the PM Kisan Samman Nidhi. Do you guys know that recently our Ministry of Health has been awarded with a prize for managing the COVID-19 pandemic, right? What was that award called as? Just very recently, I guess 2-3 days back. Anything? Yes, good Siddhartha. As for purchasing power parity, India is a third largest economy in the world as per the PPP base. Now, what is our vision for Amrit Kal? So very briefly we will see that. First of all, we want to create the ample opportunities for the citizens. That means providing them job, providing them educations as well as the other facilities in order to develop. Next is we'll be aiming up to growth and then servicing these focus areas in our journey to reach the India at the rate 100. That means 100 years. Yes, Potter Prize till 100. Next is what else we have done for the improvement. Economic empowerment of the women, Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, National Rural Livelihood Mission. Under this, we have seen that the government is providing financial support and is aiming that the women should form themselves in the SHG self-help groups so that financial help can be provided to them and there can be the rural employment generation by themselves only. Next is PM Vishwakarma Kaushal Samman. For the first time, a package of assistance for traditional artisans has been conceptualized. So you see how inclusive our government is becoming. We are taking care of everyone, any kind of needs, any kind of occupation that you are into. Every kind of occupations are being supported by the government. So your PM Vishwakarma Kaushal Samman Yojana, it is for traditional artisans. What you are doing? You are improving the quality, scale and reach of their products. It will benefit the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes as well as the women people who are belonging to the weaker sections. In any kind of government scheme, we have already seen that. Then focusing on the tourism related opportunities as well as the green growth. In every sector that you might be seeing, even in the petrols etc., we have got the ethanol related provisions, biodiesel related provisions. So we are promoting the green development in every sector wherever we can. So this is called as a green growth. Then there are some 7 priorities, Saptarishi, not very important, please don't go for that in the budget. See, you will might be seeing all these so many kinds of what you can say, uh, just a guidance as well, right? So these guidance and these formulas you do not have to remember around the different kinds of word. What we have to focus on, we have to focus on schemes, facts, as well as the datas. Next is priority number 1. Priority number 1 is our inclusive development. Now, how does inclusive development has been envisaged under this particular budget? So, digital public infrastructure for the agriculture. Digital public infrastructure for the agriculture, why it is needed? So, agriculture is facing so many problems nowadays. You have to do the crop estimation. Now many of the times, because the weather is changing, climate is changing, we are witnessing the February has been too much hotter, right? Even the March here says temperatures are soaring, so that obviously impacts the agriculture in a negative way. We want to digitalize the agriculture so that the help should reach to every farmer who is in the need. So this is our aim, and that is what we do. This is going to enable inclusive farmer centric solution by having the information on crop planning, what is the crop health, as well as providing them inputs, credit, insurance, crop estimation, market intelligence, and support for the agri technology industry and the startups. So there have been so many agriculture related innovations. One of them is a happy seeder. This is just the example which I am giving. So what does happy seeder does? It helps you with relation to agriculture related solutions. You might have seen so many agriculture technologies which also help in controlling the stubble burning. They include the stubble in the soil as well. So these kind of technology related interventions as well as development we need. So if we'll be having data related to agriculture, we'll be able to do that. So this is the aim of generating a digital public infrastructure for the agriculture. Next is Agriculture Accelerator Fund. This will be set up to encourage agri startups by young entrepreneurs in the rural areas. This is a funding, like we have seen so many funds, right? These funds, what they do, they have got a fixed corpus, and out of that fixed corpus we provide the funding to the eligible groups, and this particular accelerator fund has been made in order to support the agriculture related startups. Next is we have got Atmanirbhar Horticulture Clean Plant Program to boost availability of disease-free quality planting material for high-value horticulture crops and at an outlay of 2200 crores. What does horticulture means? What does horticulture means? What is the meaning of horticulture? Arey yaar, you people are not telling the meaning of horticulture itself. So your vegetables related thing, right? Growing of vegetables, etc. They come under the, yes, they come under the horticulture thing, right? 2200 crores funding has been provided with this. Global Hub for Millets, Shri Anna. So this is a very good data that you should be looking at for. India is the largest producer as well as the second largest exporter of Shri Anna. Shri Anna like jowar, ragi, bajra, kuttu, ramdana, kutki, kodo, china, as well as sama in the world. The Indian Institute of Millet Research, it will be supported as Center for Excellence for sharing the best practices, technology, etc. So what you have to remember, the name which is being used, and apart from the data, that India is the largest producer as well as the second largest exporter. See, these particular millets, they are very good for the environment as well. Why they are good for the environment? Because they take less water intake, right? And they give more nutrition as compared to the your wheat as well as the rice, right? So hence they are very good for the human health as well. They are very good for the planet's health as well, and they do consume less water. So it is a win-win situation for in every aspect. So hence India is promoting that particular thing. Then we'll be targeting about the agriculture credit. It will be increased to 20 lakh crore with focus on animal husbandry, dairy as well as the fisheries. Why do we are promoting this? Because these are they have got insulated from the climate change related impacts. If the farmer will be only focusing on the agriculture, then the climate change related changes that are happening in all over the world, they'll not be having the yes. So yes, we are focusing on it. Why? Because we want to support the farmers in every way. Depending just on agriculture is not just the way forward, because there have been so many dreadful problems in agriculture due to climate change. So these are the alternatives for that. For fisheries, we have got PM Matsya Sampada Yojana with a target investment of 6,000 crores. Next is cooperation. To realize the vision of Sehkar se Samriddhi, the government has already initiated computerization of 63,000 primary agriculture credit societies with the investment of the 2,516 crores. So now with this particular thing, we'll be having a data. Primary agriculture credit societies, though these work at the ground level, right, basic level. So hence the computerization of these are necessary. Government is also going to facilitate 8 cooperative societies, primary fishery society as well as the dairy cooperative societies in the uncovered panchayats and the villages in next 5 years. The data is like this. Those who do not have any particular scheme etc., you just can read out for your understanding. Apart from that, they do not have the enough significance. Now we'll be talking about health education and skilling in the next class. So for this class, this is it. Thank you so much for joining in. I hope you enjoyed the class, and please do not forget to like this video.